So it's all about like what you do today is going to shape your future tomorrow. And that sort of rings through my head literally every single day. It's like you got to roll up your sleeves, attract the attention of those that can help you by first helping yourself. Why start tomorrow to do what you could do today? All those things around execution are really the things that motivate me, and I use to kind of motivate everybody else as well, too.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am thrilled to have one of my USC colleagues here who's also a rock star, a multiple-time author, a professor, about to start working on his PhD. So many things. Bobby Borg, you have so many things going on.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having me. Definitely, this is going to be fun.
This is really going to be fun. I've had a few musicians who moved into other roles before, but not for a while. And I haven't had anyone who's a multiple-time author who's traveled with bands that we all know and has made this transition into being an academic, having a lot of books, creating curriculum, and like a YouTube channel to help indie musicians make to the next phase. So before we get into that, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your background and your rebrand from rock star to professor.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that. So yes, thank you for that introduction. Currently, I am a professor and I am an author. And prior to that, I was a musician. So like, how did that bridge happen? How did that rebrand happen, right? That's a crazy, crazy story. I'll try to keep it really, really short. But generally what I discovered is that music is an art, but making money from it, succeeding in it, lasting in it is really a business. And I started to become more passionate about the business, really, because I just saw so many musicians just kind of naively try to navigate the music industry. And I just kind of felt like, I was at a point in my career where I experienced some things, I reached my dreams, and I was just kind of like, this became my new dream. So it all started at age 4 when I was born, into loving music via my father playing big band music around the house. So my father was a clothing designer. I am not representing today. But he made beautiful custom tailored suits for rich business persons. And when he first came to America from the island of Malta, he was working at Paramount Pictures underneath Edith Head and making clothes for like movie stars and things of that nature. But, he really inspired me to get into music, and I started playing for hours and hours and practicing hours and hours and hour days as a kid. And living in the proximity of New York City, I studied with the world's greatest musicians, and they encouraged me to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I got a BA in professional music. And I was working sort of professional in Boston, and through my networking ended up with a record deal with Atlantic Records, and we had all the big producers and managers and agents. And I experienced that whole ride of seeing yourself on MTV and hearing yourself on the radio and seeing yourself in magazines and stuff. And then it all sort of came crashing down when you realize that music is an art, but making money from it is a business. I'll repeat. And, and we were like numbers on a spreadsheet. And that was like, ugh, like, do I want to do art? Like, this is yuck. This is, I don't want to be poor and live in a tent.
Well, let me ask you, because you worked for very big groups. Can you just name drop a little bit so that people who are listening, that.
Yeah, sure. So, among like playing like with a lot of people, I think that like sort of the big leagues was when I went to New York and got the record deal with Atlantic Records. And, and there, we're writing songs with Desmond Childs, who's written big songs with Kiss and Alice Cooper and Bon Jovi and that type of thing. We were managed by the same people that handle Metallica. We were lawyered by the Who's lawyer. We produced records with the same people that, did Guns N' Roses. And the members in my band played with Billy Idol and like Ozzy Osbourne, and the group was called Beggars and Thieves, and it was signed to Atlantic Records. And that sort of band didn't really take off hugely, but it was the plateau for me. And then I started my own group and did licensing deals and things like that in Germany and Japan, and then joined a group called Warrant. I am not the original drummer, but Warrant had many hits in the 80s and late and early 90s. And I did 2 records with them and toured the United States and Japan and Mexico, and it was a good time. It was a lot of fun. It was a
It
lot
was
of
a
fun.
good time, but even with all of your success, being signed, creating music, licensing, going on tour I mean, I remember being in high school and being in theater tech, and everybody else who was in theater tech were big metalheads, right? So we were always listening to all the different bands. I was more of a Cure, Depeche Mode girl.
Yeah, I love that
But
stuff.
this was in the middle of, nowhere, Kansas. So everybody listened to heavy metal or rap pretty much at that point. So I'm aging myself a little bit, but even through all these experiences, you have had all of this validation, right? You're very talented, but it just didn't fulfill number one, consistency, right? With monetary consistency. You were on the road all the time. So yeah, at what point did you cry uncle and just say, this is not what I want to do? I can turn what I'm interested in, my passion, into helping others.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting. I mean, when you're an artist, or even when you're an entrepreneur in general, right? I mean, you'll go out on the road, money comes in, and then you're not doing stuff for a couple months, and then you're spending the money and stuff. So, you just you just learn how to kind of deal with that. That wasn't really an issue or a factor in any way, shape, or form. It was more kind of like you're working so hard to get somewhere, and then when you get there, you sort of question whether or not it's where you really are meant to be. Like, it's kind of strange. It's like, my God, like anyone would give anything to be here. Like, what's sort of wrong with me? And, I think it was kind of a combination of a number of different things, but it also had something to do with always traveling, always being sort of away from home, always being around people that had, like, we're talking rock and roll now, right?
Right.
So your audience members, hold your ears if you can't handle it. But, some alcohol, some drugs. I wasn't participating in that. I had my running shoes and my protein shakes and blenders with me. But, I had a little bit of fun, but, nothing crazy. But you're always around this kind of stuff. And you just, it's funny, you kind of go, the audience is drunk, the band is drunk. Like, does anyone care? Like, all these years of working hard, it just didn't feel right anymore. I felt like there was a bigger purpose for me,
Yeah.
and coming from a level-headed sort of upbringing, and living across the street from Princeton University, my dad's clients were people like Mr. Johnson, and there was a lot of common sense and sense and success like that. I was always sort of surrounded. So it allowed me to keep sort of like a level head and go, I don't want this. I don't think this is the lifestyle for me, Also, I think what I also found was a need in the marketplace. And that was, there is not a book by a musician for musicians that teaches people about the music industry and sort of, and helps guide people and, and takes them out of this fairy tale. And it sort of was like a light that went off and said, this is a hole. There's no one filling it. And I just became passionate about writing. And then one tour, I just said, I'm not going. And that was it. And then I literally spent the next 3 years writing and rewriting and rewriting. What am I trying to say? What am I trying to say? What do I want to say? And then, going back to school and taking classes and writing classes and all kinds of stuff. And the next thing you know, Billboard, which is a huge company in music, like, wants to publish it.
Nice.
And that is the beginning of a whole new rebrand, which is kind of some funny stuff, but like, am I still Bobby Borg?
Right.
Or am I Robert Michael Borg, the author?
Right. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, I love that you always kept your head on straight. I don't know anybody else in that time period, who would be thinking about exercising, drinking protein shakes. You, of course, I mean, now you recently won fourth place in the United States at Gold's Gym Fitness Challenge. So you've always been into this. You kept your head on straight. You turned down opportunities to do something else that you felt really passionate about. And the funny thing is, your story is replicated throughout more traditional corporate.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the number of people who I interview and talk to who have gotten to this pinnacle of success, and then they're like, wait, I have all this money. I've been able to afford whatever my family wants, but I'm not fulfilled inside. There's something else I'm supposed to be doing. There's a different purpose. But you were able to take all of that expertise and turn it into a series of books that were needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack in this, right? I mean, certainly did I wish or would I have liked to been like, this huge monster band. I mean, like you think of groups like Metallica that are still like selling out huge places 40 years later. I mean, I think I would have loved to get to that status, but I think I got to a point where I realized that, maybe the level that I sort of have achieved is sort of the ceiling. And I said, if I'm going to get out, now's the time,
Yeah.
So I decided to make that move. But the interesting thing about making the move, and I think this is important to your listeners, is that it's not like climbing down the tree and then wandering in the field, like to find another tree. Like the roots are still there. I just found another branch. And I think that's important because I didn't abandon ship. I used all the things that I've done prior as leverage, do what I do now. I mean, I'm an assistant professor of practice, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's how they see me. And that's kind of how I rebranded myself. So it's not walking blindfold, like going, where am I? I'm lost. It was utilizing a lot of the successes I had, as a stepping stone.
A lot of people nowadays also think about writing books to help solidify and codify their brand, their thought leadership, their expertise in a field. How hard was it to write all of the books? Did you workshop them with anybody? Now, of course, many years later, we're in the world of AI. People are using that as a shortcut to writing. A lot of people use ghostwriters. There's so many options out there. So you just did it yourself and just plugged away.
Yes. And I mean, it's crazy, looking back, just listening, you ask that question because I wasn't a writer. I mean, even worse, because I was so fanatical about the drums and I was practicing like literally not a joke, 20 hours a day. And even though I did graduate from Berklee College of Music with like scholarships and awards and that type of thing, the academic classes that I had to take were like, I did what I did to pass. So I wouldn't even say that I was like, where I am now or where I wanted to be academically. It was just, a professional musician. This is what I do. It's like, you're training for the Olympics. That's what you do. You skate 24 hours a day. So I just started writing. Something has to come out. So I was writing and writing. That's not what I want to say. I mean, I didn't call myself an author until I think my third book, because it was just like, I felt, do I deserve to call myself an author? But I was an author. It was weird. I didn't write it. I figured out, what am I trying to say? It's crazy. I didn't have any tutors. I just wrote. And literally there was, I think, 78 versions of the book before the first one came out. And I just kept on writing. In fact, this is crazy, really crazy. I didn't even have a computer. Now we're going back to like 1993 or 4. But so I literally was writing with yellow legal pads and whiteout. I mean, it's insane. I mean, not, and then eventually got the computer, and then eventually we're talking rebrand. Like, I mean, so of course, since that moment, I've been like literally in school for 20 years. I mean, I have like, 3 certificates, a master's degree, I mean, I went back and did all of the math. I mean, it was just all of the English. I did poetry. I did acting class. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. So just wrote. And I think there was one thing that someone said to me, which is really helpful. I became friends with a guy named Gail Hickman, who's a TV writer in Hollywood. And he said, can I take a look at your manuscript? So I showed it to him and he said, can you explain a music manager to me real quick? Just talk, just explain to me. And he goes, why didn't you say that? You sound like you're trying to write. And I said, can I write like the way I talk? And he said, write the way you talk.
Wow. Yeah.
And with your passion, with your enthusiasm, with even the things like, look, you guys, listen to me, like stuff like that. And I was like, are you serious? And I did. And it literally changed everything.
Amazing.
Because now it was me writing from the heart.
How did you connect with Billboard? How did they know about your book to decide that they wanted to do this?
I wrote an amazing elevator pitch.
Oh.
I got on the phone and I was really nice to the receptionist. And I talked her into passing me through to the senior editor. And which all of this is a huge lesson. If anyone's listening right now, you guys, it's just a huge, right? You have to have a pitch, like sell the benefit, like what is the need in their catalog? How does it benefit them? And just kind of laid it out to them. And the secretary was like, I'm going to put you through to Bob Nurkind. And then Bob Nurkind got on the phone and I just like 10-seconded it. This is like, what I am. This is why you need it. This is what it is. And he just quiet for a couple seconds. And then he just said, I think I have to see it.
Wow.
And then I sent it to him and he immediately wrote back and said, we want to sign this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And at that point, did you get the whole, because I know nowadays it's shifted a lot with publishing. There's a lot more self-publishing. Even if you have somebody, backing you, a lot of times I hear authors have to still do their own promo. They're not getting as much love and support. So I'd love to hear about your experience with that, because I know a lot of people who are listening probably aspire to write a book someday if they haven't already.
Yeah. And I've written, I think 8 or something. So I've got a couple of things to offer. Yeah, I did get the advance and I, did get the support from the senior editor. And, you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. If we can back up for 2 seconds, like so many people are writing books, you know what I mean? Or think and that's fine. But I had to write the book. It was like going to therapy. It was cathartic for me. It was like, I need to figure out what I just went through for all these years, and I had to do it. So I did it. And I drove people nuts. I wrote for 4 years doing nothing, or 5 years doing nothing but that, So you have to you have to have something to say, and you really have to need to say it. And then when you enter into a deal, which you don't have to, but the reason why I did it is because of, sort of the brand equity that a company like Billboard would give me, because now I'm associated with Billboard. So that was very, very important because that put me at a different level now. So it wasn't just, put out a book, like everybody else does on Amazon and you sell it. It was published by Billboard, which is very prestigious. The money helped for sure. Not huge, but definitely way huger than it is now. And, and they don't really do anything. They will send your book to everybody. So if I say, send one to you, they'll do it. I say, send it to this person. And they don't even ask me why we're sending books to these people. They just trust me that it's going to lead to something. You'll write a review for me, or you'll invite me on your podcast or whatever. So they just do it, which is cool. You do see it in stores. You do see it literally everywhere. You could see it in Target. You could see it on Amazon. You could see it in, Barnes and Nobles. And, and then professors around the world that want a desk copy can reach out to them. And it's all these benefits, that come from it. Or Berklee College of Music would ask me to come speak at their school. And then, I'm going out and speaking in China. And the money that you get from these things are bypass all of any advance or any kind of fees or royalties you get. It's all the other stuff that comes from it. You know?
Well, and let's talk about that. So then what moved you to become a professor?
I was speaking at somewhere to promote my book.
Right? Yeah.
And somebody that was the chairman of a school called Musicians Institute came up to me and said, come to my office. I would like to talk to you, you know? And I said, okay. So I went to his office. We scheduled a meeting and he just said, I think that you would make a great teacher.
Oh,
Because you sounded really good on stage and it seems like you connected and you're speaking from the heart and stuff. I had no thoughts or interests of doing this. And I said, well, I guess that would be a cool way to promote the book and they can use the book in the class and that type of thing. So I started doing it and then I kept on doing it. And then UCLA asked me to start teaching at their extension program. And then Herb Alpert School of Music started asking me to teach there. And then USC started asking me to teach. And USC asked me to become a full-time professor at their school. And, I'm a USC graduate as well. I have a master's degree there. So I was just like, it meant the most to me of all the schools, because it's my
yeah.
home, so to speak. And here I am. So
Amazing.
crazy how things happen, right?
Yeah. And what are some of the trends that you're seeing with the students who are going through your classes? Because I think sometimes people wonder, and I will say, we've talked about a woman, I guess, that I used to do PR for, who's a sophomore at USC, going through the music program as a vocalist. She also plays some instruments, and I was working with her when she was 15, didn't really have a brand, and she had a song go viral during the pandemic called Lonely Christmas. Shout out to Wallace if you're listening. But sometimes people are like, why would somebody go to a university to study music? Or why wouldn't they just go out there and, just go out there and practice and try to find their dream on the road?
Yeah. Well, I wish that a lot more people would talk about like why do people do school, right? Because if you think about it, like why do you learn like the quadratic formula and why do you try to solve three equations at one time? And why do we do slope and all these things that probably most people don't even remember because they want to forget, like why? So why do we spend so much time and why is there so much emphasis on doing it? Because I know no one really sits down and tells you. And it's the practice of doing it over and over. It's the practice of discipline. It's a practice of waking up every morning. It's a practice of taking directions. It's the practice of messing it up and then actually working hard to get it. And it's the whole process of being around your peers. It's the whole process of peer pressure. It's all of these things. And many times it's not even about the quadratic formula. It's about, can you memorize some crazy formula and make sense of it? And I wish more people sort of stress that. So do you have to go to a school to like have someone sit down and say, hey, play the piano or something? And do you have to get a degree doing that? Can you just do it or just sit in your cellar and do it or just go out and start playing? And, someone would even argue, do you have to go to law school? Can you just go to all the law school libraries and just figure out what everyone's reading and what they're doing and then study for the bar and try to pass the bar? I don't know the legalities behind that or anything, but the libraries are accessible to everybody, So I think there's a lot of reasons why we do that. And it has to do with being around peers and making connections. There's something I call the clique of the future, which basically means everybody that's immediately sort of around you is going to be the next generation. And when you make friends and when you're tight and you kind of form this group, then as people go through the industry, this guy gets a gig, that guy gets a gig, this guy gets a gig. You get on the phone and call him, hey, remember me from and that's what gets you gigs. That's how I got my first gig. Two friends of mine graduated and moved to New York. And that's how I got into New York, So a lot of times it's that, and then it's just the discipline of being around other disciplined people, which kind of affects you. So I'm a 100% advocate of school and academics and training and pushing yourself and being around, the right peer groups and the right people and just dealing with all of that stuff. So
yeah, I obviously agree with you completely because that's also why I teach. I love the fact that I'm able to help inspire this next generation, that they have a peer set, they have people they can rely on, whether it's us as professors, right, opening our connections to them, or whether it's each other saying, oh, I know there's a new job here. My company has an opening, or let's do a project together. Let's start a company together. It's just really amazing what happens when people are disciplined and really focused on something
Yeah.
when they get together.
I've had this desire, I've had this need to communicate my entire life. I remember when I was a kid, I was literally had a series of like cartoon books and things like that in the first grade to like the third grade. I was already writing. So I say I wasn't a trained writer, but I guess I was a writer now that I think about it, right? Because I was already doing it. And I always had to reorganize things and re-speak them in a way that made more sense, you know? So one of the things I enjoy about teaching is trying to make complicated things a little bit more simple, and then using stories and things of that nature and seeing it connect with people, and then seeing those things help people. You know, that's one of the things I sort of like the most, obviously, about teaching is making that connection. So the light bulb goes off in their head. They're like, you know.
100%.
Mm.
I want to go back to something you said. You said, are you Bobby Borg or are you Robert F. Borg? Did I get that right?
M Borg.
Okay, M.
Mhm.
Sorry. Did you feel that shift? Did you feel like you're moving really from am I Bobby anymore to I'm now Robert? You still go by Bobby. So
Yeah.
can you get into that a little bit?
And I'm glad that you brought that back, because
Yeah.
that was kind of lingering in the air. And I think it's a very, very important thing, because there was a lot to do with branding and, of course, rebranding. So I am originally Robert Michael Borg. So how did Bobby come apart? Let's talk about that first, right? So legal birth name, Robert Michael Borg, you know, like most, you know, you're named after saints and things like that, right? So my mother having a, you know, sort of an Austrian, I'm first generation American. She came from Austria. So a lot of times she would call me Rob or Rob. She called me Robert, and then Rob. And then my dad would call me Booby, right? For some strange reason. I don't know why he didn't call me like Ruby but his accent, it was like Booby. So he called me Bowie. And then, strangely enough, when I went to New York City with the record deal, Atlantic Records said, you know, Robert Michael Borg sounds a little bit like a law office, you know? Like
No.
the
Really?
offices of Robert Michael Borg, you know? So Bobby would be cuter for the girls' audience. I mean, you know, we can comment on that, but that's what they said, you know? So Bobby, like Bobby Borg, like Bobby Borg on drums rather than Robert Michael Borg on drums. It just sort of sounds more powerful.
It also sounds like a easy listening or rock.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's just, you know, Bobby Borg, you know, less syllables, you know, strong. So I was like, I could roll with that. My dad calls me Booby anyway. So all of a sudden I become Bobby Borg, and all my friends were just like Rob and Robbie, like, what's this Bobby stuff? Eventually, there's still some of my friends back in college, they still refuse to call me Bobby, but a lot of people just kind of rolled with it and started calling me Bobby. Fast forward to your question, like now that I'm no longer going after being rock drummer, you know, I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do now. Like 1 minute I'm standing in front of an audience and they're like screaming, and now I'm like standing in front of an audience and it's like at Pepperdine, like law school, like speaking on a panel where like people are just kind of staring and looking at you, and like, you know, it's a whole different audience. Do I need to wear suits now and walk around with leather like briefcases? And should I be Robert Michael Borg? Would that sound more sophisticated and work more with the brand? So for a while, all of a sudden, I was wearing my dad's suits and I was like dressing up, and I was maybe thinking of calling myself Robert Michael Borg again. I did have the leather briefcase and stuff, and it was just kind of like, now I'm just like everybody else. So as a way to sort of position myself uniquely, I said, wow, I wonder whether or not like I became Bobby professionally. Maybe I should just stick with Bobby. And in fact, the students even call me coach. They don't call me professor.
Okay.
So it's again a way to position myself uniquely from everybody else, because everyone else is professor and I'm coach, which is basically a metaphor for literally, I was in the field and I played football. I scored some touchdowns. I wore the pads, but now I'm on the sideline as your coach, pushing you to get out there and to do it. And I'm still on the field. I'm just not playing. So the coach metaphor sort of, you know, it's like we're all in this to win this. It's not like I'm a professor, snotty with all these degrees, and I sit on this big bench above you. It just kind of makes the playing field equally. And for all the professors out there, I'm not saying anything about you. It's just the way I thought about positioning myself.
Yeah.
And so I just went back to being Bobby and dressing sort of more casually, and of course maintaining the professionalism of a professor, but at the same time letting them know that like we're sort of all kind of in this together, sort of,
Yeah.
you win, I win,
Nice.
kind of thing. You lose, I lose.
Yeah.
Truth.
Yeah. Names are important. I also use a different name than what I was born with because I'm first generation on my mom's side. And my sister and my brother both got the cool names, the ethnic names, and I got the all-American name. So I rebranded myself when I was in middle school. And now I'm slowly shifting the pronunciation to the correct pronunciation because my sister's Rani Shashiri, my brother's Ivan Kripatanan, I'm Anne Margaret. So I started using Annika because it was already Anne. So I thought that would be the easy transition. Now I'm trying to get people to say Annika because that is the correct pronunciation. And I'm so many ethnicities that have that name that it makes sense. But it's really funny to hear because everybody has a different variation. Bobby, I hope people would just look at that name and say Bobby. And my name, it's Annika, it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, and I even called you Annika too as well.
Yeah.
Although, most Europeans or people outside of America would say ah for
Yes.
A instead of A.
Yeah.
So I should know better that it was Annika, but nonetheless, I said Annika too. And interestingly,
Well, I was using Annika for a long time. So
I see. Okay.
you're not wrong.
I got you.
Yeah.
And then as far as Bobby goes, like even when I'm in Malta, like
Yeah.
you go, you mean oh. So in
yeah.
Malta and England, I was speaking to someone from England the other day, and they say, you mean Bobby? Like they say, how do you spell your name? I said, Bobby. And they go, B-A. And I go, no, Bobby. And they go, oh, you mean Bobby? So in the English will pronounce it like Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby. Like my dad did actually. So.
Wow. Names are fascinating. And I love the fact that we, have that connection that we both have rebranded ourselves through the use of name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brand, a name. If we're just speaking about business or we're just speaking about a product, I believe that a name doesn't necessarily make or break you. And I only say that because there's a lot of companies with really crappy names and they're successful. However, in the crowded marketplace, I would say, don't just have a crappy name because there's other companies that are successful with crappy names. It's really helpful to have a great name, because it's going to make you stand out. It's going to be more memorable, so it's good to start off with a good name. It doesn't make or break you necessarily, but it doesn't hurt you. Let's just put it that way. So good name is important.
There's a lot more that we're going to discuss on my USC podcast. I have a whole other slew of questions I want to ask about teaching methods and getting more into the name aspect and how you workshop that with your students, or if you do. But for now, I want to see what advice you have for anybody who's listening, who's thinking about a rebrand, who has reached the pinnacle like you had and discovered that they really have something else inside them that they need to get out.
Okay. So wherever you are, you have to be happy that where you are, because if I wasn't sort of satisfied with what I achieved as a professional musician, I would never have been able to step off and start working towards the rebrand, because then you'll always regret it. Like, God, if I only stood with it, I would have been like, I really decided like it's time to step away. So I think you have to be really sure about that it's actually you doing this, and it's not like a family member or a spouse sort of pushing you in that direction, because you will never forgive them and you will never forgive yourself, right? So I think it's really, really important that wherever you are, you're happy with where you are and you can say bye to it, right? So I think that's really important. And I was, there was a lot of things I accomplished and I was fine with it. So I would say that's absolutely number one.
Nice.
Number two, as I pointed out before, be careful of being a dreamer. And there's nothing wrong with being a dreamer, but you have to say to yourself, okay, so look, I've been a lawyer for the last 20 years and now I decided I hate it. So I'm going to be a hockey player, and it's just like, dude, it's just like, You know what I mean? Too old, like not physically there. Now, anything is possible in life, but you kind of have to ask yourself, like, are you seriously just going to jump out of something and then try to be a hockey player when people have been it like 20 years longer than you?
Yeah.
So you have to be, there's a sense of reality that needs to go with this too. So it's not just you like going through a midlife crisis or something, you know? So you have to really ask yourself. So I would say try to find things about you that are truly things that are about you, like things that where the root is still in the ground, but you're just finding another branch, you know? And so, you know, me being a professional musician and now actually sort of coaching the people that are trying to get into it, or being a professor for those that are trying to get into it.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're a football player or a baseball player. Now you become the announcer, right? That understands the sports and the plays and can announce and help, you know, sort of show people like how the game is going and things of that nature and analyze it. So I would try to say, try to find something at the root of who you are and what you've been doing for so many years and kind of try to roll with that a little bit. I think that would be kind of in your best favor. And then realize that it's not going to happen overnight. And this is the biggest mistake people make. So, you know, it took me 20 years, I would say, to become a professional drummer and be like, all of a sudden I realized, well, you know, there's still a little bit I would like to do, but at least they're putting my name on drumsticks and stuff like that, you know, and then it took me 20 years to become an assistant professor, you know, at USC. I mean, it didn't happen overnight, and it took, you know, many, many books and many, many teaching in the adjunct phase and then teaching in the extension schools and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you become it and everyone's like, yeah, look at him. Like, why did they make him an assistant professor and all that and stuff? And it's like, because I've been doing it for 20 years. I've written books and I've sat at home night after night while you were having fun, you know? So that's why. So and be able to put the time in.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you. I know we're going to direct people to your YouTube channel as your main source of truth, correct? So youtube.com/Bobby Borg. I'll have that in the show notes. People can kind of find out about the books and watch your videos and get a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny because yes, they can. They can go to, I mean, anyone that's interested in music and music business, then yes, you can go to that channel and you can watch, I think I have 682 videos or something to date. And, you know, if we can, just for 2 seconds, let's talk real quick about YouTube, because YouTube is a trip in itself, and figuring out the algorithms and then figuring out, you know, the videos to make people watch, which is actually something else that's going to tag on to your question about rebranding. You know, when do we start making videos that we don't want to make just because they're the videos that you have to make? Like, so for example, you know, in order to kind of keep people watching, which is really the most important metric on you, keep them watching. I've noticed that people will say what I could say in 3 minutes in 20 minutes.
Oh,
and there's all these little tricks to keep on people watching and listening and talking in circles. And I'm going to give you the 3 things, but first, I just want to tell you, you know, all that stuff.
We've all gone to those webinars where we're like, you say you're going to actually share this information, but you're not going to share it. You're going to make me sign up for something else.
Yes.
And then you're still not going to share it.
Yes. And basically, and I'm just saying, and the whole reason why I got into this is because I like to communicate and simplify things and structure things in a way. So I'm like going, am I going to be something I'm not just so that I can get more views or just so that I can have, you know, have a more successful channel or whatever, or a bigger audience? And I just don't think I would be happy with myself doing that, you know, and then making the thumbnail and the title not accurate in order to draw people in,
right? And
then say controversial things to piss people off, and then pee people off. Sorry if you need to blurt that, in order to get them angry at me so that they start writing hate mail. And then, you know, and then I'm like, oh, good, everyone's engaging now. Perfect. I'm winning.
Let's keep it positive.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, be careful. I think for the purpose of your own soul, you have to kind of be true to who you are, but at the same time, you have to make a living. So just try to find the balance between those two things, because I can't play that role and just start being fake and telling people what they want to hear and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and for all the consultants out there listening to, be careful, because another consulting technique is just tell the client what they want to hear oftentimes. And it's like, I can't do that either, So it's just, you got to be true to yourself, I think.
Yeah. And this leads perfectly into my last question. I always close with, what is your favorite, or doesn't have to be your favorite, but what's a verse, a motto, words, a poem, a saying, anything that helps continue to help you feel like you want to grow, you're going in a positive direction, and it inspires you?
Well, someone told me recently, or someone said recently, which really amplifies a lot of what I believe in. They said, the keys to success are not that difficult, but what's difficult is the execution of those things. Not everybody can execute. Not everybody can get up in the morning, jump up, work out, eat a healthy day, be productive. People have, their mind plays tricks with them, they don't know. So it's all about like what you do today is going to shape your future tomorrow. And that sort of rings through my head literally every single day. It's like, you got to roll up your sleeves, attract the attention of those that can help you by first helping yourself. Why start tomorrow to do what you could do today? All those things around execution are really the things that motivate me. And I use to kind of motivate everybody else as well, too. It's, with exception, we have a lot of control over our future. It's just, if you can kind of just get that into your head, I think that can help you to go, let's do this.
Fantastic. Bobby Borg, thank you so much for coming on to Your Brand Amplified, sharing your story, your journey with us. Thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again with another inspiring story with some amazing person like Bobby, giving us some tips and tricks to make our lives and our worlds of work a little bit better every day. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.